Silence is not emptiness. Stillness is not laziness. And doing nothing is not weakness. We have been trained to believe that life is a race: run faster, achieve more, become something. From morning till night, the mind is busy, noisy, restless. Even when the body is tired, the mind refuses to stop. We glorify action, worship effort, and fear rest as if it were death. But I invite you to look deeper. When you do nothing, you are not wasting time, you are returning home. In that moment of non-doing, the mind loses its grip and awareness is born. Trees grow without effort. Rivers flow without ambition. The sun rises without a plan. Existence knows the secret we have forgotten. Life happens best when you are not forcing it. Doing nothing does not mean escaping life. It means entering it fully. In that silence, creativity awakens. In that stillness, clarity descends. In that pause, you finally hear your own being. Tonight, we are not here to learn how to do more. We are here to remember the power of stopping, the wisdom of waiting, and the revolution of simply being. Because sometimes the greatest action is doing nothing. Doing nothing is the most misunderstood act in human history. From the moment you are born, you are pushed, shaped, trained to move, to achieve, to improve, to become. The world does not ask who you are. It asks what you do. And slowly, silently, your worth is measured not by your presence, but by your productivity. In this madness of movement, something essential is lost. You forget how to be. You forget how to sit with yourself without an agenda, without a goal, without a direction. Doing nothing is not inactivity. It is total activity without effort. When the body rests and the mind stops chasing, awareness awakens. You have seen it in small moments when you are watching the sky with no thought, when you are listening to music and suddenly the listener disappears, when you sit by the sea and time dissolves. In those moments you are not doing anything, yet you are more alive than ever. Life is happening, but you are not interfering. The mind is uncomfortable with non-doing because it survives on noise. It feeds on plans, memories, desires, regrets. The mind says, if you stop, you will fall behind. But behind what? The trees are not in a hurry. The stars are not rushing to reach somewhere. Existence is not running. Only the human mind is sprinting toward nowhere. And in this running, it misses the miracle that is always present. Doing nothing is not escape, it is courage. It takes immense bravery to sit silently and face yourself without distraction. Most people keep themselves busy not because they love work, but because they are afraid of emptiness. In silence, the masks fall. In stillness, the false dissolves. When you stop doing, you begin seeing. And seeing is dangerous to the ego because the ego survives on becoming, not on being. The world teaches you that rest must be earned, that silence is laziness, that pausing is failure. But these are lies created by a restless civilization. Real intelligence knows when to act and when not to act. Wisdom knows that forcing life only creates tension. When you do nothing, you allow life to move through you. You become a witness rather than a controller. In non-doing, the mind slows down like muddy water settling in a glass. When movement stops, clarity appears on its own. You don't have to polish awareness, you only have to stop shaking it. Meditation is not something you do. It is something that happens when doing disappears. The moment effort ends, grace begins. Children know this secret. They can sit, stare, play without purpose. Animals know this secret. They rest without guilt. Only humans have turned rest into sin and busyness into virtue. But look closely. Your deepest insights never came when you were forcing them. They came in the shower, in silence, in boredom, in moments of doing nothing. Doing nothing does not mean renouncing action forever. It means acting. From silence, not from compulsion. When you move after stillness, your action has grace. When you speak after silence, your words have truth. When you create after emptiness, your creativity has depth. Without non-doing, all doing is blind. You are not here to constantly improve yourself. That idea itself is violence against your being. You are already enough, but you are too busy to notice it. Doing nothing is remembrance. It is coming back to the center where nothing is missing. In that center, there is no hurry, no comparison, no ambition, only a quiet joy without reason. The world will not understand this power, because the world lives in noise. But once you taste the sweetness of non-doing, once you feel the peace that arises when you stop interfering, you will see that life has always been supporting you, breathing you, living. You and all your effort was only getting in the way of what was already flowing stillness, has been wrongly labeled as laziness, and laziness has been wrongly feared as decay. This confusion has created a restless humanity that cannot sit silently even for a few moments. If there is no phone, the hands become uneasy. If there is no task, the mind starts trembling. Stillness feels dangerous because you have been taught that movement is life. But movement is only the surface. Stillness is the depth. Without depth, movement is meaningless. Stillness is not the absence of energy. It is the source of all energy. A lake appears calm on the surface, yet it holds immense power in its depth. The ocean does not advertise its strength with noise. The mountains do not shout, yet they shape the earth. True intelligence is quiet. Only stupidity is noisy, constantly proving itself, constantly announcing its presence. When you are still, the mind calls it useless. The mind does not understand silence because silence exposes the mind's emptiness. The mind lives on borrowed energy, desires, fears, ambitions. In stillness, these borrowed movements disappear and the mind feels threatened. That is why society keeps you busy. A busy person never asks dangerous questions. A busy person never discovers who they are. Stillness is not something you do. It is something you allow. The moment you stop interfering, stillness descends like evening after sunset. You cannot force it, just as you cannot force sleep. The more you try, the farther it goes. But when you relax, when you stop trying to achieve even silence, it comes on its own. Stillness is natural, restlessness is learned. A still person is not passive. On the contrary, a still person is intensely alive. Their actions come from clarity, not from reaction. They do not move because of pressure. They move because of understanding. Their yes is total, and their no is clean. Stillness sharpens intelligence. It removes the dust from perception. The world respects speed but ignores direction. Stillness gives direction. Without it, your actions are accidental. You run faster and faster, but you do not know where you are going. Stillness is the pause that allows you to see, and seeing is the highest form of intelligence. You have been told that if you stop, you will fall behind others. But behind whom? Everyone is running in circles, chasing mirages. Stillness is stepping out of the crowd. It is refusing to participate in collective insanity. It is not laziness, it is sanity. In stillness, life speaks. Its voice is subtle, not aggressive. If you are noisy inside, you miss it. Stillness tunes you to existence. You start sensing instead of thinking, feeling instead of analyzing. Intelligence, then, is no longer mechanical. It becomes intuitive. A still mind does not accumulate knowledge, it understands. Knowledge can be borrowed, but understanding arises only in silence. When the mind stops chattering, truth does not need explanation. It is seen directly, like light is seen when clouds move away. Laziness is unconscious rest. Stillness is conscious rest. Laziness dulls you, stillness awakens you. Laziness comes from escape. Stillness comes from awareness. Do not confuse the two. One is sleep, the other is awakening. When you honor stillness, you stop wasting energy on unnecessary movement. Your life becomes simple, economical, graceful. Even your smallest action carries weight because it comes from a silent core. Without stillness, your life is a collection of reactions. With stillness, your life becomes a response to reality itself. The mind is addicted to movement the way a drunkard is addicted to alcohol. It does not move because movement is needed. It moves because it cannot remain with itself. Thought after thought arises not out of intelligence but out of habit. Even when there is nothing to solve, the mind invents problems. Even when there is peace, it creates noise. This constant inner traffic gives the illusion of life, but it is only restlessness. The mind fears gaps. A single moment of emptiness feels like death to it. In that gap, the mind disappears, and something far more real is present. That is why the mind keeps you busy. It tells you stories about the past, dreams about the future, anything to avoid the present. The present is dangerous for the mind because in the present, it has no authority. Movement gives the mind a sense of importance. As long as it is doing something, it feels needed. Planning, worrying, remembering, imagining, these are not signs of intelligence. They are signs of addiction. The mind repeats itself endlessly. If you observe carefully, you will see that today's thoughts are just yesterday's thoughts in different clothing. You believe you are thinking, but most of the time thinking is happening to you. You are not the master. You are the host. Thoughts come uninvited, stay as long as they want, and leave behind fatigue. This is not freedom. This is occupation. And the occupier is the restless mind. When you try to stop the mind directly, it rebels. It becomes louder, more aggressive. Suppression never works. The secret is not to fight the mind, but to watch it. Watching requires no movement. In witnessing, the mind slowly loses its grip. Like a machine without electricity, it cannot function when awareness is present. The mind survives on time. It needs past and future. The moment you are totally here, it becomes irrelevant. That is why moments of deep joy, love, or beauty are moments of thoughtlessness. You do not think when you are truly alive. Thinking returns only when life is missed. Society encourages mental addiction because a mind that never stops is easy to control. A silent person cannot be manipulated easily. A silent person cannot be hypnotized by slogans, fears, or promises. Silence is freedom. Noise is slavery. You have been taught that thinking is your greatest asset. It is useful, but it is not your master. When thinking runs non-stop, it becomes a disease. The modern human suffers not from lack of thinking, but from the inability to stop thinking. Doing nothing breaks this addiction gently. When you sit without purpose, without goal, the mind starts losing its fuel. At first, it will create chaos. Thoughts will multiply. This is withdrawal. If you remain unmoved, if you simply watch, the storm passes on its own. In that calm after the storm, you taste a different quality of being. You are present without effort. You are alive without anxiety. You realize that you exist even when the mind is silent. In fact, you exist more authentically then. The mind wants to be in control, but life does not need a controller. Breathing happens without thought. The heart beats without planning. Existence functions perfectly without mental interference. Doing nothing allows you to trust this natural intelligence. Once you see the mind's addiction, you are no longer its victim. Awareness is enough. You do not need to escape the world. You only need to stop running inside. The greatest freedom is not changing your thoughts, but realizing that you are not your thoughts. Rest is not inactivity, it is resistance. In a world that measures your value by your exhaustion, choosing to rest is a silent rebellion. Society has programmed you to feel guilty when you are not productive. Even when you sit, the mind whispers that you should be doing something useful. This guilt is not yours. It has been planted. It keeps you obedient, chasing targets that are never truly yours. The culture of constant doing thrives on your forgetfulness. A person who never stops never looks within. Continuous activity becomes a strategy to avoid oneself. If you pause, uncomfortable questions arise. Who am I without my roles? What remains when I am not achieving? These questions threaten the foundations of a conditioned life, so rest is discouraged, even mocked. True rest is not sleep, and it is not entertainment. Sleep is unconscious, entertainment is distraction. Rest is conscious non-participation. It is stepping out of the race while fully awake. When you rest this way, you are no longer feeding the system that depends on your anxiety and ambition. You reclaim your time, your energy, your attention. The world calls this laziness because it cannot profit from a relaxed person. A relaxed person is dangerous. They are not easily provoked, not easily seduced, not easily frightened. Fear loses its power over someone who knows how to be at ease with themselves. Ambition loses its grip. Comparison fades. Rest dismantles the inner tyrant that keeps pushing you forward without asking where you are going. That inner voice that says more, faster, better is not wisdom, it is conditioning. When you rest, you stop obeying it. Silence becomes an act of disobedience. In rest, you discover that life does not collapse without your effort. The sun still rises. The heart still beats. The world continues. This realization is shocking to the ego, which believes it is indispensable. Rest humbles the ego and liberates the being. When you rest deeply, you stop leaking energy. Much of your tiredness is not physical, it is psychological. It comes from inner conflict, from wanting to be somewhere else, from resisting the present. Rest resolves this conflict by saying yes to now. A rested consciousness sees clearly. You begin to notice how much of your life has been driven by borrowed desires. You start dropping unnecessary burdens. Simplicity arises, not as a discipline, but as a natural outcome of seeing what is essential and what is not. Rest reconnects you with rhythm. Existence has its own tempo, slow and vast. When you are always rushing, you move against it, creating friction. Rest brings you back into harmony. Actions that arise from this harmony carry a different fragrance. This rebellion is quiet. There are no slogans, no protests. You simply stop participating in madness. You walk, but you are not running. You work, but you are not tense. You live, but you are not exhausted. This is the revolution of rest, invisible yet transformative. From childhood you have been taught that you are not enough as you are. You must become something else, more successful, more spiritual, more respected, more powerful. This idea of becoming creates a constant inner tension. You live in the future, chasing an image that never arrives. Because the moment you reach one goal, another appears. Becoming is a horizon that keeps moving. Being is entirely different. Being does not need improvement. It needs recognition. But recognition requires stillness. As long as you are busy becoming, you overlook what you already are. Doing nothing is not wasting time. It is dropping the obsession with becoming. The mind loves becoming because becoming keeps it relevant. The ego survives on comparison, better than others, worse than others, ahead or behind. Being has no comparison. In being, there is no ladder, no race, no audience. That is why it feels unfamiliar, even frightening. You cannot boast about being. You can only be it. When you sit silently without a goal, something extraordinary happens. For a moment, you are not trying to fix yourself. You are not judging, improving, or correcting. In that moment, the inner conflict dissolves. Peace is not achieved it is revealed. Becoming is always violent. It says you are wrong as you are. Being is compassionate. It says this is enough. Doing nothing is an act of deep kindness toward yourself. It is allowing yourself to exist without condition. Society praises becoming because it produces results. But results are always outside you. Being is an inward flowering. It cannot be measured, but it can be felt. Its fragrance is joy without reason, contentment without cause. When you live in becoming, you are never at home. You are always packing for the next destination. Being is home. You arrive not by moving, but by stopping. Doing nothing brings you back to being, because there is nothing to achieve in non-doing. The mind slowly relaxes its grip. The future loosens. The present opens. You discover that you are alive now, not later. In being, time loses its urgency. Moments are no longer stepping stones to somewhere else. They are complete in themselves. A cup of tea is just a cup of tea. A breath is just a breath. Nothing is missing. The tragedy of becoming is that it postpones life. You say, one day when I succeed, I will relax. That day never comes. Being says, relax now. Life is not a reward for achievement. It is happening already. When you taste being, even briefly, you see the futility of endless effort. Action still happens, but it is no longer driven by lack. It flows from fullness. You act not to prove yourself, but to express yourself. Doing nothing is the bridge from becoming to being. Cross it, and you realize you were never incomplete. You were only distracted. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of depth. Sounds come and go, but silence remains untouched. Words arise from silence and return to it, just as waves rise from the ocean and fall back into it. You have been listening to noise for so long that you have forgotten the background in which all noise exists. Silence is not created by effort. The moment you try to become silent, you introduce tension. Silence is already there, waiting behind your thoughts. Doing nothing allows thoughts to slow down naturally, like leaves settling on still water. When the surface calms, you see clearly. Creativity is born from silence, not from struggle. The greatest insights come when the mind is relaxed, open, and empty. When you are silent, you are available. Existence can reach you. When you are noisy inside, you are closed, occupied with your own chatter. You believe you create ideas, but ideas visit you. They knock softly. If your inner house is loud, you never hear them. Silence is hospitality. It welcomes the unknown. In silence, you are no longer separate from life. The sense of I soften. Boundaries dissolve. You do not feel like a thinker observing the world. You feel like part of the same movement. This is not philosophy. It is experience. Doing nothing deepens silence. You sit without expectation, without waiting for something to happen. And that is when something real happens. Not fireworks, not drama, but a subtle shift, a feeling of being rooted, grounded, whole. Silence heals because it removes friction. Much of your suffering is self-created through constant inner commentary. When commentary stops, wounds begin to close. Not because you fixed them, but because you stopped reopening them. In silence, you do not search for meaning. Meaning arises on its own. Life does not need to be interpreted to be lived. A silent mind trusts existence. Trust is the soil in which joy grows. The world is afraid of silence because silence cannot be controlled. It cannot be sold, marketed, or manipulated. But silence gives you sovereignty over yourself. It returns you to your own authority. When silence becomes familiar, you carry it everywhere, even in action. Quiet center remains untouched. You speak, but silence speaks through you. You move, but stillness moves with you. Doing nothing is the doorway. Silence is the temple. Enter without effort. without belief, without ambition. Sit. Breathe. Let life happen. Trust is the final fragrance of doing nothing. When effort drops completely, when even the desire to understand disappears, a subtle confidence arises, not confidence in yourself as an ego, but confidence in life itself. This trust is not learned, it is remembered. It was there when you were a child, breathing without fear, existing without question. Somewhere along the way, trust was replaced by control. Control appears intelligent, but it is born out of fear. You try to manage life because you do not trust it. You plan, calculate, ensure, protect, defend. And yet, despite all this effort, anxiety remains. Control exhausts you because it goes against the nature of existence. Life is vast, unpredictable, mysterious. Trying to dominate it is like trying to hold the ocean in your fist. Doing nothing is an act of surrender, not surrender to weakness, but surrender to intelligence greater than the mind. When you stop interfering, you begin to feel that life knows what it is doing. The heart beats without your permission. The lungs breathe without instruction. Healing happens without planning. Growth happens without ambition. Existence has been taking care of you long before you learned the word responsibility. The mind does not like trust because trust dissolves its authority. The mind wants guarantees, promises, certainty. But life offers none. Life offers only this moment. Trust means meeting this moment without armor. It means standing naked before reality and saying yes. When you do nothing deeply, trust grows naturally. You see that nothing collapses when you stop pushing. The sky does not fall. The world does not end. In fact, things often begin to fall into place on their own. This shocks the mind, which believes it was the doer behind everything. Trust transforms your relationship with effort. You no longer struggle unnecessarily. You act when action is needed, and you rest when rest is needed. There is no inner conflict. You are not divided against yourself. Action flows, rest deepens, and both feel right. Without trust, even success tastes bitter. With trust, even failure feels light. Trust removes the psychological weight you carry everywhere. You stop dragging the past and stop leaning into the future. You walk freely. Doing nothing teaches trust because in not doing there is no support from effort. You are simply there. And in that nakedness, you realize you are supported by something invisible yet immense. Call it life, existence, nature, or nothing at all. The name does not matter. The experience does. Trust does not make you careless. It makes you responsive. You listen more, observe more, react less. Decisions arise spontaneously, not from fear, but from clarity. You begin to feel when to move and when to wait. The greatest misunderstanding is that trust makes you passive. On the contrary, distrust makes you passive because it keeps you frozen in fear. Trust releases energy. It gives courage without aggression, strength without tension. When trust flowers, even silence becomes friendly. You are no longer afraid of emptiness. You sit with it like an old friend. You realize that emptiness is fullness in disguise. Doing nothing is the training ground for trust. Sit without demand. Sit without prayer. Sit without hope. And slowly, quietly, something settles within you, a deep knowing that you are not alone, that life is not against you, that existence is not an enemy to be conquered, but a mystery to be lived. Freedom is not something you achieve by effort. It is something you uncover by stopping. You have been searching for freedom in movement, changing places, changing relationships, changing beliefs, changing identities. Yet everywhere you go, you carry the same restless self. Doing nothing reveals a shocking truth. Freedom is not outside your prison. It is the absence of the prison walls you have been maintaining. Most of your bondage is self-created. You are not enslaved by circumstances as much as you are enslaved by constant inner commentary. The mind keeps narrating, judging, labeling, deciding what should be and what should not be. This narration creates a cage made of words. When you do nothing, the narrator pauses, and suddenly the cage is no longer there. Freedom is frightening because it removes excuses. As long as you are busy, you can say, I don't have time. As long as you are struggling, you can say, I will be free one day. Doing nothing brings you face to face with now. There is nowhere to escape. This immediacy feels like danger to the mind, but it is liberation to the being. You have been taught that discipline creates freedom. But forced discipline only creates repression. Real freedom comes from understanding, not control. When you see clearly, you do not need rules. When awareness is present, behavior aligns naturally. Doing nothing sharpens this awareness. In moments of deep non-doing, you realize that choice itself becomes effortless. You are not choosing between alternatives. Action arises spontaneously. This spontaneity is freedom. It is unplanned, fresh, alive. You are no longer reacting from past conditioning. You are responding to the present. The mind wants freedom with safety. It wants freedom without risk. But life offers no such deal. Freedom means insecurity. It means not knowing. Doing nothing teaches you to relax into uncertainty. You stop demanding guarantees. You begin to trust the unknown. When you stop doing, you see how much of your life has been lived according to borrowed ideas. Ideas about success, morality, spirituality, respectability. These ideas shape your behavior like invisible chains. In silence, these chains become visible. And once seen, they lose their power. Freedom is not rebellion against society. It is freedom from being unconsciously ruled by it. You may still live in the world, follow its rules when necessary, but inwardly, you are no longer a slave. Doing nothing creates this inner distance. You participate, but you are not possessed. A free person is not antisocial. They are non-conditioned. They can say yes without losing themselves and say no without guilt. Their actions are rooted in clarity, not fear of punishment or hope of reward. You have mistaken freedom for indulgence and discipline for virtue. True freedom is neither. It is awareness. When you are aware, you cannot harm yourself or others because harm comes from unconsciousness. Doing nothing brings light to places where darkness once operated automatically. The greatest slavery is identification. You say, I am this body, this name, this story, this past. Doing nothing loosens identification. You watch thoughts, emotions, sensations arise and pass. Slowly, the sense of a fixed self softens. With that softening, freedom expands. Freedom is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It is quiet, ordinary, almost invisible. You notice it in small things. You are less reactive, less defensive, less tense. You laugh more easily. You forgive without effort. You breathe deeper. Doing nothing is not an escape from responsibility. It is freedom from false responsibility. You stop carrying the weight of the whole world on your shoulders. You do what is needed, no more, no less. When freedom is tasted, even briefly, ambition loses its urgency. Fear loses its grip. You realize that nothing essential can be taken from you. This realization is unshakable. Doing nothing opens the door to this freedom because it removes the noise that hides it. Sit. Let the mind quiet down. Let identities loosen. Let life be as it is. In that allowing, freedom is no longer a concept. It is your natural state.